Hi everyone! We did a whole intro to sliders in the last video, which covered the basic concepts for using pretty much all sliders in BodySlide and Outfit Studio. Since sliders are such an important part of these applications, I want to spend another general video on them before we do some specific exercises. Today we're going to learn how to work with sliders, and here's what we'll be covering. If you really get into using Outfit Studio and/or BodySlide, you'll need to become intimately acquainted with sliders and how to make them, edit them, delete them, merge them, and so on. This video will hopefully be a good reference for you to come back to as needed, and please don't forget to use the video chapters or the timestamps in the description to skip directly to certain parts. Sliders are great tools for editing meshes, but they do have some pros and cons. On the good side, when you use a slider, everything will match between your starting NIF and your ending NIF, including the vertex count, vertex order, textures, weight painting, partitions, and so on. Sliders can save you time. They can reduce or remove the need for manual editing, and they can easily replicate manual edits that you've already made, which is really handy when you've made a lot of changes or if you've made edits that are difficult to replicate. A slider will sometimes, but not always, give you better results than manual editing. This probably depends a lot on user skill, but it's worth mentioning. You may want to give sliders a try first, and if you don't like the results, you can always just edit the mesh manually. This is all well and good, but we have to acknowledge that sliders aren't perfect. So here's the bad side. They require you to set up and use the appropriate sliders. This means having a bit of know-how and taking the time to set things up properly. Sliders can take more time than manual editing, especially if your edits are small, simple, or very minor things. Or if you end up having to mess around a lot with your source NIFs in order to make them slide properly, such as using merged meshes, and if they're merged in a different order, then you'd have to re-separate and re-merge them in order to make them match. Sliders can distort your mesh more than manual editing. How much depends on the mesh and the slider, but it's pretty much a given. I'll talk more about this in a minute. Sliders are great, but they can create problems, especially for geometric shapes. And last, sliders don't work very well for meshes that sit far away from the body or other meshes. Basically, anything that sits far away from the reference shape that's used to make the slider can be a problem. And full skirts are a prime example of this. So I don't recommend using a slider for a long full skirt unless it's very tight-fitting, and even then, it might look a bit weird. Despite the cons, my overall advice is that sliders are great and you really should give them a try. If creating the slider is more hassle than it's worth, or if the slider does not give results that you like, then just scrap it and go for manual editing. Nobody said you have to use sliders, even if they are already available as resources, such as body conversion tools in many of the body mods. Let's talk a bit more about how sliders can distort your mesh. Anytime you edit an outfit, whether it's manually or with a slider, you are distorting the mesh from its original shape. If you do this well, the distortion will be negligible and the overall quality of the outfit will not be impacted. But editing a mesh using sliders can distort it more than manual editing will, mostly because sliders don't have any inherent judgment to decide if what they are doing is good or bad. They just do what the math says to do. The degree of distortion you get from a slider versus manual editing depends on the skill of the user, the mesh you start with, and the edits that you make. So there is not a hard and fast rule about when to use a slider and when to do something manually. You'll have to try both and decide for yourself which looks best. As I already mentioned, geometric shapes commonly used for buttons and buckles and the like are especially problematic when using sliders. So to get a quality outfit, you'll need to pay special attention to these parts of your mesh. In addition, mesh distortions can be magnified each time you apply a slider. For example, if you run an outfit through a series of conversion sliders, kind of like using Google Translate through a bunch of different languages, then you won't necessarily end up with the same thing at the end as you had at the beginning. For this reason, I recommend that you limit using sliders, especially for body conversions, to the absolute minimum needed to achieve your goal. This will help to preserve the original outfit shape and integrity as much as possible. You can edit new sliders that you've made yourself or edit the existing sliders in a project. In fact, when you create a new slider, you are actually editing that slider during the process. To edit a slider, simply click the little pencil next to it. The slider will turn purple to indicate you're in slider edit mode. From here, you can directly edit the ending shape into a new shape or import a brand new ending shape as long as it has matching vertices. See my previous video for more on that. While in slider edit mode, you can use all the tools here in Outfit Studio to edit the ending shape. The shape you see when the slider is purple is the shape the mesh will have when the slider is set to 100%. And this, in turn, affects how the mesh will look all along the slider scale from 0 to 100%. When a slider is in edit mode, you can also change its settings. Click the little gear icon next to the pencil to open the slider properties menu. Here you can change the name of the slider, as well as set options for how the slider behaves in BodySlide, such as invert, hide, and zap. I'm not going to cover what these do right now, but feel free to play around with the options if you are making a project for BodySlide. You will often need to edit sliders and the ending shape of a slider in order to make the best looking projects. We'll talk more about how to do this later in the video. All the sliders here in Outfit Studio have little tick boxes next to them, and they are ticked on by default. We can use these tick boxes to select and deselect the sliders. This is helpful for a number of functions. We covered conforming meshes to sliders in the last video, but we didn't talk about how you can pick and choose which sliders you want to apply. Using the slider tick boxes, you can, for example, conform a mesh to only certain sliders. Just untick the sliders you don't want and tick the ones you do want before doing the conform step. And then when you conform all or conform selected, only the sliders you had ticked on will be attached to the mesh or the meshes. You can quickly select or deselect all of the sliders by ticking this box right here. And you can filter the slider list using this filter box here. Note that filtering does not select or deselect them, but it will show just the sliders that match the filter. This can be useful if you have a long list of sliders and you want to only find certain ones. When navigating through the slider list, note that you can put your mouse pointer to the right or left side of the slider bar and scroll the mouse wheel to move the list up and down in the window. But if you have your pointer on top of the slider bar itself, scrolling the mouse wheel will move the slider instead. So just be aware of this and be a little careful so you don't accidentally move slider bars without meaning to. Recall from our last video that a mesh will not respond to a slider unless we conform it, and we covered how to conform a mesh to one or more sliders. You can also unconform a mesh, which means detaching it from whichever sliders you want to stop affecting it. To do this, first select only the sliders you want to remove from the mesh. Refer to the previous part of this video for tips on selecting and deselecting sliders. With only the sliders you want to remove ticked on, select the meshes that you want to remove the sliders from. Then go to Slider, Clear Slider Data. Click Yes at the confirmation window, and now the mesh will no longer morph when you move those sliders. You can reconform meshes to some or all of those sliders by doing that in reverse. select the ones you want to apply, select the meshes you want to apply them to, and then go to Slider, Conform All, or Conform Selected. Note that this only works on meshes other than the reference body. If you have cleared a slider from a reference body, then it's gone for good unless you reload the reference. And don't get confused by the labels here. Conform All or Conform Selected refers to the meshes that you have selected, not the sliders. All the sliders that you have ticked on will be applied, no matter which Conform option you use. You can't hide vertices from a slider using a mask, so what's a person to do if a slider distorts part of your mesh? Luckily, we have the Undiff brush here in Outfit Studio to help with this. This brush lets you undo, either partially or totally, the movement of vertices caused by a slider, and it can be really helpful for refining how the slider affects your mesh. As an example, see how this brooch on the Archmage robes gets warped out of shape when we apply a size conversion slider to the outfit. To fix this, we can click the pencil next to the slider to enter Slider Edit mode, then use the Undiff tool to brush over the part we want to fix. You'll probably want to first mask vertices around the area that should be left alone so that you can target just the vertices that you need to edit. Brushing with the Undiff tool will remove non-masked vertices from the slider action, either partly or completely, depending on how much you brush. Remember that what you are actually doing here is editing the ending shape. So, this is what your mesh will look like with the slider set to 100%. When you are done, click the pencil on the slider to exit Slider Edit mode. And now you can see how undiffing has changed how the slider affects your mesh. You can make further edits on top of that, which we will talk about next. Since, as you can see for this example, we really can't leave the brooch looking like this. An important note to remember about the Undiff tool is that it can't fix changes that you already set in stone. So once you click on Set Base Shape, then there's no going back. You can only undiff to adjust how the slider is going to work before you actually apply it and set the new base shape. We just talked about using the Undiff tool to edit the ending shape if a slider distorts your mesh. You can also apply most of the other Outfit Studio tools and functions to your ending mesh if you want to edit its shape. First, put the slider in edit mode by clicking the little pencil, and then edit away. In our brooch example, I removed it from the slider action by undiffing it. But now I have to fix its position because it clips when I move the slider. So I click the pencil, and remember that this now shows automatically the ending shape of the mesh, and then I use the tools such as Inflate, Deflate, or the Transform tool in my case, to edit the mesh however you want. When you are done, click the pencil next to the slider to exit Slider Edit mode. The slider will reset back to 0, and if you move it to 100%, you will see the new edited version of the mesh. This is how you edit the final shape for any slider, whether it's a mesh used with a body conversion slider, a custom slider that you made yourself, or an outfit that you have conformed to BodySlide body reference sliders. You can delete a slider if you'd like it to be gone altogether from the outfit or project that you currently have loaded. To do this, first be sure all the other sliders are unticked, and only the one or ones you want to delete are selected. Then go to Slider, Delete Slider, and click Yes at the confirmation window. Before you do this, though, make sure that you really want to delete it completely from whatever you are working on. Deleting a slider means it will be gone for good from all of the meshes currently loaded into Outfit Studio. And if you save this as a project, that slider is no longer available for any meshes within the project. If you want to remove a slider from just some meshes but not from the entire project, then don't delete the slider. Instead, Just unconform those meshes from the slider following the steps that I showed in that section of this video. One other quick point here, if you are making a body slide project and your outfit does not use all of the body sliders that come with the reference body, because, for example, your outfit doesn't include that part of the body, then you don't need to delete the ones that are not being used. Outfit Studio will do this automatically when you save the project, which saves you a bit of time and helps keep the file size down. If you already have a mesh with sliders loaded into Outfit Studio and you want to add something else that also has sliders, you will usually want to keep all the sliders for both projects. You can do this by merging sliders, and this option is available when you load in a second project. For example, let's say I have my outfit loaded in and fixed up with a nifty little slider that would allow a BodySlide user to move the armband to the other side. But now I need to add the CBBE body reference and all the body sliders. When I go to File, Load Reference, and select the CBBE body, then I just make sure the Merge Sliders box is ticked on here at the bottom of this window and click OK. And now you can see that my custom slider is still here at the top of the list, and the reference body with all of its sliders loads in too. I can finish up by conforming all, and now all of the sliders are attached properly to my outfit. Note that if you add project to an existing project, it will automatically add any additional sliders that come with the new project. For example, here I have the CBBE hands reference loaded up. When I use Add Project to also bring in the CBBE feet, you can see how it just adds the new foot sliders to the bottom of the slider list, while keeping the original hands sliders too. Be aware though that if you choose Load Project instead of Add Project, it will replace what you currently have in Outfit Studio with the new project. The same applies to the Load Reference option if you already have a mesh set as a reference. If you want to do this, first unset the existing reference, and then it will stay with all of its sliders when you load in a new reference using the Load Reference option. This is one way to get all the body parts and their associated sliders into Outfit Studio at the same time. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about BodySlide projects right now, since that deserves its own set of videos. But any discussion of sliders is not complete without at least mentioning a few things about all of the body sliders that are used to create BodySlide compatible outfits. Once you have your outfit fitted to a BodySlide reference body shape, such as the CBBE reference body shape, then you have to load in the actual reference body by going to File, Load Reference, and selecting the body or body part that you need. That will bring in the associated sliders. And then remember that your outfit won't move with the sliders until you conform it. Then, once conformed, you should go through every slider one at a time to make sure it morphs the outfit properly. Simply go down the list, clicking the pencil for each slider, and using the Outfit Studio tools to fix any problems that you find. Most often, you'll probably need to inflate the mesh, or perhaps undiff a distorted part and readjust it to where it needs to be. This takes time and patience, but it's really necessary in order to make a quality BodySlide project. You can use all the things we've discussed in this video during the process, even unconforming vertices or meshes from certain sliders, and in manually editing the final shape to make it look good. In this video and the last one, I've thrown a lot of information at you about using sliders in Outfit Studio. This is all intended to give you an understanding of the basics, the options, and the ways that you can work with sliders for your projects. With a good foundation, you'll be well prepared to incorporate sliders into your workflow and also to edit them appropriately for making great BodySlide projects. Thanks for sticking around for these informational episodes. Next time, we will make and use some size conversion sliders. I'll see you again soon for that. Bye!